What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. I want to start this episode off talking about USC. Right now, USC currently has the number one recruiting class in the nation. Lincoln Riley and his staff have committed themselves to not just locking down the state of Cali, but also dominating the national recruiting scene as well. USC's recruiting momentum is real. There is nothing fake about this. This is what a fully bought-in USC program looks like under Lincoln Riley. They got their NIL money right. They just hired Chad Bolden as their general manager away from Notre Dame. He's going to help properly allocate those funds. He's going to help strengthen USC's local and national recruiting. Lincoln Riley has been given everything necessary to get USC football back in national title contention. What happens this fall is going to determine if this recruiting class is able to stick. We remember around this time last year, USC had a recruiting surge, and then once we got into summer, recruits started taking visits in June and July. They started decommitting, flipping. The class fell out of the top 10, and they finished 14th. The difference between this year and last year is that USC actually is prioritizing taking back the state of California. Last recruiting cycle, Alabama went into USC's backyard and came away with 4 of the top 15 highest rated recruits out of this state. One of them was out of Mater Dei, a high school program that has been a pipeline for USC football. There's been a lot of USC greats that have come from Mater Dei, and due to the relationship with Mater Dei coaches deteriorating over the last couple of years with USC, it's allowed teams from the South to, build those relationships with that program and also other schools like St. Bosco, and now they're infiltrating on USC's recruiting ground. USC has to be able to dominate recruiting in their own backyard. Of course, you're going to have a few guys that want to go outside the state. They don't want to stay home. But if USC is actually good and they are back to what they used to be during the golden age of Pete Carroll, you should be locking down the majority of the best players out of this state. There's no reason why schools from the South like Bama, Texas A&M, and then you got Oregon, Notre Dame, and then Penn State, who are coming in just taking all of the top talent from this state. There was a point where USC always got the best players from St. Bosco, Mater Dei High School, and they need to get back to doing that. And that's what's changing this go around, and the difference that you're noticing out of USC recruiting in 2025 versus what we saw in 2024. They are making the added effort to rekindle those relationships. If you want to get back to what you were during your heyday, you gotta secure your own state. Florida, if they ever going to be able to get back to what they used to be during the Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow regime, they have to be able to lock down the state of Florida. And the way that you're able to do that is by showing these recruits this program is prioritizing being able to become a contender again. And when you do that, guys see that they have a possibility of not just being able to win, but they also have the possibility of being able to be developed for the NFL. And it gives them less reason to want to have to leave the state going to Ohio State or Alabama. Most of these guys want to stay home. It's just that why would they want to stay home when they can't trust that they're going to be developed properly at the school that they grew up watching for so many years? It's a huge risk. USC is showing us that they are fully committed to reviving this program. And as long as this administration continues to give Lincoln Riley the resources that he needs, I expect for this class to only get better. We could see USC bring in their best recruiting class in a very long time with what they have currently right now and the guys that they're going after, they are possibly going to flip a few more guys. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see them flip some guys that are outside of the state of California. Something that also has been a noticeable change with USC recruiting is how they went from being a school that when you used to look at their recruiting classes 4 and 5 years ago, you only saw maybe 2, 4 or 5 guys max outside of the state of California. Now, these last couple of cycles, you're getting guys like Cameron Fountain out of Atlanta, Georgia. You're being able to get guys like Jason Zandamela, although he transferred. At the time, it was a big pickup for you. You got him out of Florida. USC is showing us that they have the ability to be a national, prominent recruiting brand again. They're not just a program that's regulated to just recruiting on the West Coast, only being able to recruit out of their state. They can recruit anywhere. USC is viewed as a blue blood program. It's not like they're a program that hasn't really been in the spotlight before. Nobody knows about them. Majority of people know about USC everywhere. So there's no reason why USC shouldn't be able to assemble recruiting classes from all over America, where you got some of the best players of Texas and Florida included with that California talent that you're bringing in. I believe in what Lincoln Riley is building at USC. This program is in a way different situation now than what they were when Lincoln first took this job. Remember, Clay Helton did a terrible job of recruiting. Before he got fired, he brought in some of the worst classes in the history of USC football. This was not a team that was supposed to be as good as what they were when they won 11 games year one under Lincoln Riley. They were able to overachieve due to them not having to play Washington and Oregon that year. They only had to play Utah, and they lost to them twice. So that shows you, everything you kind of needed to know about that team that year. The best team they played, they got smacked around. Now, the second time they played Utah, if Caleb Williams never gets banged up during that game, maybe that's a different outcome. And they probably do get into the playoffs if he never gets injured during that game. But ultimately, after year one, Lincoln Riley had to rebuild this program again. And he also had to get the administration to buy in. He had to make them realize that college football is different now. You just can't expect for recruits to flock to USC due to the name, due to the proximity. You have a little bit of an easier time getting these guys compared to if you were somebody like Ohio State or Alabama recruiting outside of the state trying to get them. But at the same time, you still have to be able to fork up the necessary NIL money to incentivize them to want to stay home. And you have to show them that staying home is the best decision for them being able to win, compete, showcase their abilities in front of everybody on the national stage, and also be able to be developed for the next level. This new coaching staff with D'Anton Lynn, Doug Belt, and several others are doing a great job of selling USC football for being a program that should be where every California high school player wants to play for again. You shouldn't want to go outside the state anymore. You should want to play in front of your family and friends. You should want to stay close to home. And USC right now, with them locking down the state of Cali, being able to keep Oregon, Penn State, and some of these other big name programs from coming into their backyard, snagging all of their great talent, is going to help this program get back into national title contention. If you haven't already, make sure that you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. Remember, we are not just a YouTube channel. We are a podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. If you have any questions that you would like answered on a future episode, send them in the DMs. Instagram at JT Sports, X at JT Sports __. We want to hear from you. Go ahead, send your questions in so we can answer them when we do our mailbag episodes. You can find us Instagram at JT Sports _ and on X at JT Sports __. Florida State's volatility makes it hard to predict how good the Seminoles are going to be this season. No team in the history of college football has ever finished last in their conference the year after winning their conference title the season before. Mike Norvell has to prove himself again. He has to show that he is the right head coach to continue to lead this FSU football program, because after last year's debacle, I don't know if he was carried by Jordan Travis, Jared Verse, and the other talent that was on that 2023 squad, or if he actually is a solid coach. Maybe he already peaked at Florida State. Maybe that 2-year run between 2022 and 2023 is the best that we're going to see of Florida State football with Mike Norvell as the head coach. He brings in a new coaching staff. He cleaned house with his previous coaching staff. You had to do that after only winning 2 games. Is Gus Malzahn going to be a home run hit at OC for him? Is he going to have a similar impact for the Noles that Chip Kelly had for Ohio State last year during their national title run? My issue with Gus Malzahn and why this is a huge wild card is due to, for one, at Auburn and UCF, Gus Malzahn gave up play calling duties twice. Yeah, he was the head coach. He had to manage more responsibilities, and with him taking a reduced role, only having to worry about calling the plays, it could make it a lot easier on him. But there's been plenty of head coaches who have done a good job of balancing the responsibilities that comes with being a head coach and a play caller, i.e. Lincoln Riley. So when Gus Malzahn is giving up play calling duties and taking it back at his previous 2 stops, it gives me a little bit of pause that maybe he just has been a little bit outdated. Maybe college football has caught up to Gus Malzahn's scheme and his system that used to be so special at getting the most out of any running back that he put in. I don't know if the hiring of Gus Malzahn is going to play out as well as what Mike Norvell is hoping for. Meanwhile, the hiring of Tony Wright as defensive coordinator, I'm really confident this is going to work out. He did a great job during his time as the DC for Nebraska. They had one of the best defenses in the Big Ten. They had really good defensive line play, and they were really good at getting after the quarterback. And what makes Tony White such a great defensive coordinator is his ability to change things around. He isn't somebody that just sticks with one scheme. He can do a variety of different things out of this 3-3-5 that he likes to run. Florida State defensively last year wasn't as bad as what the statistics show. When you have an offense that's constantly going 3 and out and turning the football over, it puts a lot of added pressure on your defense. They're on the field for more plays. They get fatigued a lot faster. I expect for this defense to play at a top 50 level or better under Tony White being the play caller. This new coaching staff, there are some guys that I really like and also some guys that I really don't know about. I'm not saying that I'm against the hiring of Gus Malzahn, that is not going to work out, but I really don't know how much upside you get with Gus calling the plays. We know the ground game is going to tremendously improve, but is he going to be able to bring out the best in Boston College transfer Thomas Castanelos? It's weird how a guy who had an 18-4 touchdown interception ratio randomly gets benched in the middle of the season and isn't able to reclaim the starting job. It's a little bit weird. He is a really good fit for Gus Malzahn's system. He's a uber athletic quarterback, really shifty, reminds me a little bit of Kyler Murray, but it's just a little bit, it just doesn't make sense how a guy who had the stat line he had at Boston College with Bill O'Brien in year one as the head coach just wasn't able to reclaim his starting job. There has to be a little bit more to that situation than what we know about. But overall, with this new coaching staff, this is what's going to largely make or break Mike Norvell this season. If he nailed all of these new hires, Florida State could probably end up right back in the ACC championship again. I don't question the talent on FSU's roster this year. The chances of them whiffing on their second straight portal class is very slim to none. I give Mike Norvell a little bit of a benefit of a doubt because, yeah, as bad as what last season was, the year before, he did a really good job of building up Florida State. They went from being a team that year 1, 3-6, year 2, 5-7, year 3, 10 wins, year 3, you go undefeated, win the ACC title during the regular season. That was just a really one-off year, in my opinion, when it comes to evaluating Mike Norvell. I don't think we will ever see FSU have a season that bad, but it still doesn't mean that FSU isn't capable of disappointing again. There is a path where maybe they only win 5 or 6 games this year. And there also is a road where maybe the Seminoles win 9, 10 and get right back into the ACC championship and we see them in the CFP. You just don't know how good this team is going to be this year. That's why the Florida State Seminoles are college football's biggest mystery team in 2025. Their transfer portal class looks pretty good. You bring in some good starters on the offensive line that should be plug and play for you. You got Squirrel White and Deuce Robinson coming in at wide receiver. You got more dynamic playmakers at wide out this year than what you had last year. And also your offensive line should be a lot better at opening up holes in the run game and protecting the quarterback. But ultimately, I want to know if they can develop the guys that they recruit out of high school. That has been the biggest issue Florida State has experienced under Mike Norvell. And it's a underrated reason why 2024 was the second worst year in the history of Florida State football. When you do a poor job of developing the guys that you recruit, it makes it a necessity that you always have to strike gold on everybody that you bring into the transfer portal. Now, it looks like Florida State is using the transfer portal to mask their inability to develop the young guys that they get out of high school. And that's why we've seen Florida State recruiting somewhat take a hit in that regard. So this year, with the transfer portal class you bring in, it's relatively a little bit smaller compared to previous portal classes. That shows that Mike Norvell is going to be banking on some of those high school guys at receiver, cornerback that step up and take big leaps in their development. We're going to see just how far the Noles can go being a team that relies heavily on this portal approach, being portal or die. Because that's really what it is when it comes to FSU. If they don't have a great portal class and they don't bring in a bunch of guys that can come in and produce right away, they end up being screwed because they can't develop high school talent. So this is a team that they could be just as bad as what they were last year, or we could see them right back in the playoff discussion. It's really hard to figure out what FSU is going to be this year. The talent at Miami has never been better. Over the last 3 years, they've had the ACC's #1 recruiting class, and they always come away with some of the best players out of the transfer portal. It is ACC championship or bust for the Miami Hurricanes entering year 4 under Mario Cristobal. This team, over the last 2 years, it seems like they just been stockpiling talent. It seems like every single year under Mario Cristobal at this point feels like the best Miami team since the early 2000s. And you're wondering, if not this year, when is Mario ever going to be able to get the Hurricanes over the hump? When is Miami going to be able to live up to the level of talent that they bring in every single year. When you stockpile 3 of the conference's best recruiting classes consecutively, you have to get that to translate to success on the field. They say that talent in college football matters a lot. It doesn't matter how good of a head coach you are if you don't have the Jimmys and Joes. Well, Mario Cristobal has all the Jimmys and Joes. As a matter of fact, he has more Jimmys and Joes than anybody else in the ACC going into this year. The biggest weakness that held back Miami from getting to the playoffs last year was how bad the secondary was. You get rid of the defensive coordinator, Lance Guidry. You replace him with defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman, who had one of the best defenses in the Big Ten last year. You add 4 of the top 20 highest rated cornerbacks out of the transfer portal. This defense has no weakness anymore. You got a really good front 7. You can get after the quarterback. You should be pretty formidable against the run. And you have a secondary that has a lot of talent and a lot of depth as well if you have to overcome a few injuries or two. And offensively, going from Cam Ward to Carson Beck, we shouldn't see any drop-off from this offense. If anything, this offense should improve with Carson Beck taking over at the helm due to less pressure that the offense is going to have on them with the defense not giving up 30, 40 points a game. With Carson Beck, you're not getting somebody who's as talented as what Cam Ward is, but you do have somebody that, if he's able to bounce back to the player that he was in 2023, he's good enough to be another first-round caliber quarterback, and he's good enough to get Miami to a point that they were unable to get to a Cam Ward. That's winning the ACC championship and making an appearance in the college football playoffs. Carson Beck could have the most successful season that we've seen a Miami quarterback have since Jim Kelly and the 80 and all of the quarterbacks that were playing during those national title runs. This is a team that has a way better supporting cast around Carson Beck than what he had at Georgia during his final season in Athens. I'm really high on the trajectory of this Miami program. My only issue is I don't trust Mario Cristobal as the head coach. If Mario can't prove this season that he can get Miami to the ACC championship game and to the 12-team playoffs, I don't believe he'll ever be the guy to do so. Curt Cignetti and Rhett Lashlee have already done more with less than what Mario has done at this point. If Mario can't get Miami into the CFP, they should go ahead, fire him, and bring in Rhett Lashlee. Rhett Lashlee has already shown the ability to turn around the program due to what he's done with SMU. He's a really good recruiter. He has really good connections in Texas and South Florida. He will be perfect to maximize all of the resources that Miami has. Mario, he's a Miami guy. He bleeds orange and green. He played on a national championship team at Miami as an offensive lineman. But eventually, with all the talent this program is starting to get, it has to start to translate. You can't keep on saying that he needs more time when you just continue to get better and better every single year. You're cutting all of these big checks when it comes to NIL. You can buy up anybody that you want and need in the portal or high school recruiting. Mario has to have a big year this year. It's playoffs or bust for the Miami Hurricanes. The outlook of this program has never looked better. Recruiting is surging. You're coming off a 10-win season. Every time over the last 14 years, a Miami coach has won 9 to 10 games. They always end up regressing the following season. We've seen it happen with Mark Richt. We've seen it happen with Al Golden. When he had a 9-win season, Miami regressed the year after. And Manny Diaz, although he didn't have a 9-win season, he went 8-3. We saw how the program went backwards after that year. It just seems like the last few coaches this program has hired Every time they have a big year, they peak, and then we see a steady regression after. Can Mario continue to have this program going upwards? Can we continue to see a positive trajectory? Can we continue to see positive progress instead of backwards progress? Can Miami continue to make those 10 steps of gradual improvement right back into getting into championship contention? Do you guys remember when Tim Tebow first got to Florida? Despite being behind veteran quarterback Chris Leak, he was too good to be left off the field. He had a really good true freshman campaign. And during his sophomore season, he just exploded. He had 55 total touchdowns. He won the Heisman Trophy. And when you look at DJ Lagway going into this year, it's very possible we could see him take a Tim Tebow leap this season. He played well despite not being 100% during the majority of his starts last season. We didn't get to see a lot of his athletic ability because he wasn't really running around that much, but he was really impressive throwing the football. I know the touchdown interception ratio looks a little ugly, 12-9, but he was really impressive throwing the deep ball. As a matter of fact, he was rated as one of the best deep ball throwers in all of college football, according to Pro Football Focus. He had a passer rating of 99.4 on throws 20 yards or more, and he completed 63% of his passes on those throws as well prior to that hamstring injury. Imagine how good he's going to be with a full off season where he's fully acclimated to Billy Napier's system. He'll be more relaxed in the pocket. You know, the game would just be more slower to DJ Lagway this year than what it was his true freshman campaign. And if we see DJ Lagway take a Tim Tebow leap in 2025, not only is he going to win the Heisman Trophy, but Florida probably ends up winning 10, 11 games. They make it into the college football playoffs. Billy Napier gets a big extension. You see a recruiting surge, and then you see Florida catapult right back into the national spotlight. When you have a great quarterback, everybody's paying attention to you. Everybody's talking about you. That's why we could see DJ Lagway follow down a similar path to what Tim Tebow did. When Tim Tebow came out of high school, he was talked about the same way DJ Lagway was. He was arguably the best quarterback coming out of his high school class. He was a guy that very early flashed, and you wonder if he was ever going to be able to put together the consistency throwing the football, and he did it very early. Guys like DJ Lagway, it doesn't take them 3-4 years to pop. When you have somebody that has all of this pristine coming out of high school, normally they figure it out fast and they do it very early. And I wonder just how good Florida would have been if DJ Lagway played the entirety of last year from week 1 to the final week of the regular season. As a Miami fan, I wouldn't want to have seen DJ Lagway if Florida and Miami played again before last season ended, because that game probably looks a lot differently than what it did week 1. DJ Lagway, throughout the season, in spite of his injury, you consistently saw him get better. You consistently saw him get a little bit more comfortable after every snap he took. He has to get a little bit better taking care of the football, and you want to see him be a little bit more poised in the pocket. But overall, you know, the future is very bright with DJ Lagway at quarterback. And not just the future bright with him at QB, but all of the young talent that they have from that same recruiting class that brought DJ Lagway. You know, a lot of those guys got in as freshmen last year when they produced. Florida's leading rusher was a true freshman last season. DJ Lagway isn't the only young promising talent that Florida has on this roster. You know, him and a lot of these other players, they could see major jumps in their second seasons, and we could see Florida have the best year that they've had in a very long time. There's a lot of reason for why folks in Gainesville are hyped up about DJ Lagway. I believe the hype is definitely justified, and this is coming from a Miami Hurricane fan. Hell, I was rooting for y'all to fire Billy Napier, because if y'all did, I definitely wanted Miami to open up that doggone checkbook to get this dude, because he's a stud. I believe the hype. I really do. Shedeur Sanders' replacement is going to make Colorado's offense better this season. One of my bold predictions for this year is if Colorado gets 2023 Kaidon Salters, they're winning the Big 12, and they're making the college football playoffs. Kaidon Salters was a huge pickup for Deion Sanders during this past portal cycle. He's a transfer from Liberty. Last year, he had a down season. But in 2023, he was one of the best quarterbacks in college football. He accounted for 44 total touchdowns, 32 through the air, 12 on the ground. He was third in pass efficiency. He had over 1,000 yards rushing. He had 11 games with 2 or more touchdowns, 4 games with 100 yards rushing or more, and he was Conference USA Most Valuable Player. He led Liberty to their first undefeated season in program history, appearance in the Fiesta Bowl, New Year's Six Day against Oregon. Kaidon Salters is an absolute stud, and he's going to elevate Colorado's offense to a level that we didn't see them reach when Shedeur was at the helm. And why I feel this way is firstly due to his rushing ability. Kaidon Salters is going to give the Buffs a reliable ground game for the first time under Coach Prime. With what he's able to do on design quarterback runs, whether you call read options, zone reads, quarterback power, defenses are going to have to account for that. They're going to have to game plan for what he does with the ball in his hands on the ground, and it's going to create opportunities for whoever else is behind Kaidon Salters in the backfield at running back, whether that be Augusta or you end up having Welch back there or Dallin Hayden. Expect to see a large increase in production out of Colorado's rushing attack this season if Kaidon Salters ends up beating out Julian Lewis for the starting job, which I believe he will. You're getting somebody that is a multi-year starter. He started 2 straight seasons at Liberty. You're getting somebody that understands what it takes to prepare as a starter, and you're getting somebody that has the ability to completely take over games. The Big 12 is the weakest Power 4 conference in college football. They don't have a lot of athletes on the defense side of the football that's going to be able to contain the kind of player that Kaidon Salters is. You're not going to have linebackers that are going to have the speed to get out to the edge to stop Kaidon Salter from breaking off a 40, 50-yard touchdown. You're not going to have defensive backs that are going to be skilled enough to find a way to slow down Kaidon Salters throwing the football. He's just as good throwing the ball as he is running that thing. There's nothing that Kaidon Salters can't do. And that's what makes Colorado's offense so scary with him at the helm this year. How are you going to game plan for him? You can put everybody you want on the line of scrimmage to stop the run, and they can just beat you over the top. Don't forget about Amarion Miller. He's next up. He easily is one of the 5 best wide receivers in college football this year. He got injured midway through last year. He's fully healthy this season. In Colorado, they've done a really good job recruiting wide receiver as well. I expect this offense to be more effective, more efficient, and more explosive with Kaidon Salters being the starter this year. Not to say that Shedeur Sanders was bad. Shedeur Sanders was great. He was the best quarterback in Colorado history. But with what Kaidon Salters brings with his athleticism, is going to create a different element with this Colorado offense that we haven't seen during the previous 2 years. And with Kaidon Salters getting a better offensive line, remember, Colorado already got Jordan Seaton and Cash Cleveland, who were freshman All-Americans. They just need to find 1 or 2 more good offensive linemen, and they should at least have an above-average offensive line. That's going to make it a lot easier for Kaidon Salters to make plays versus when Shedeur Sanders was at quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Kaidon Salters end up being a Heisman finalist at the end of this season. He is one of the best quarterbacks in college football that nobody talks about anymore due to how he kind of disappeared in 2024. But in 2023, he was a monster. He was statistically one of the best quarterbacks in the nation during that span. And if Colorado gets that version of him in 2025, I don't see how they don't end up winning it all, at least in terms of winning the Big 12 title and making it to the college football playoffs. And Deion Sanders, third season with the program? Whoever said cheaters never win lied, because in college football, if you ain't cheating, you're losing. A few days ago, I came across something posted by On3 on Instagram where an anonymous Big 12 staffer said, if you're not tampering, you're putting your program and university at a disadvantage to win games. Essentially saying, if you ain't cheating, you're going to lose. And college football, let's be honest about it, it now is pay to win. That's what name, image, and likeness has become. It's no longer about brand deals and sponsorships. Like Deion Sanders said, you don't see a lot of these players in commercials. I haven't seen Nico Iamaleava in a lot of commercials, and he's one of the highest paid quarterbacks of the NIL era. I don't see Arch Manning in that many commercials. Like, it now has become the equivalent to NFL free agency in college football. And now with Matt Rule starting to trend along with Steve Sarkisian of not having spring games, so they weren't able to showcase talent for other schools to come and steal their players, it further shows how close we are to college football becoming the new NFL. If you already don't want to say it already, to me, when I watch college football, I'm watching the NFL on Saturdays. This sport doesn't even look recognizable from what it was a decade ago when me and a lot of you guys my age in your early 20s first started watching this sport. At this point, it's the wild, wild west. You can steal anybody you want to off any team as long as you have the money to pay them. Nobody is off limits. There were schools out there that were offering the bag and the offer that Jeremiah Smith couldn't refuse to lure him away from Ohio State. Oregon, I've seen them called out twice by two different head coaches or two different coaches, one of them being the former offensive coordinator for Boise State, who openly said that, after the playoffs ended, Oregon flat out came and tried to take our best players. For all of you all who have this fairy tale dream that a school like Boise State will ever be able to win a national championship, those days are gone. Teams like Oregon, USC, whoever has the money to buy up all of these great players, they can hit up the best player who's playing defensive tackle for Boise State and say, hey, man, we got $600,000 for you and a guaranteed spot if you come play for USC. You're in the bigger conference, you get more exposure, and you got an increased chance of getting drafted higher in the NFL if you come play for us. You don't have a lot of players that have the character of Ashton Jeanty that are willing to decline the big payday due to the loyalty that they have for their program. Loyalty is something that wears very thin in college football. There's not a lot of it anymore. In today's new age of college football, guys are only loyal to the dollar. Same thing with these coaches. And that's why you gotta cheat to win. If you're not going out there trying to steal players from other teams, somebody definitely is trying to steal the best players off your team. And what are you going to do when that happens? And you end up being stubborn and you're trying to stand by on your morals and your principles and say, no, we're not going to steal players from other teams. It's unethical. We're still going to try to do things honorably. When you try to do things honorably, yeah, it sounds good in theory, but that's not going to stop anybody else from doing it. Why do you think Dabo Swinney now is using a transfer portal, making all of these new moves that we've never seen Dabo make before? Why do you think Dabo has changed his tune to a lot of things that he has been so stubborn to embrace? Because he realizes that just because he's not going to do it isn't going to stop anybody else from doing it. You know, he probably is saying to himself, if guys are going to steal my players and I'm not going to counteract with that, I'm never going to have a shot at being able to get back to a national championship. So he, at this point, has had no choice but to adapt. In college football now, you have to cheat to win. That's what this sport has become. And I don't really want to say you have to cheat to win. It really is pay to win. It's like college football to me is like Ultimate Team in Madden. Oregon, Ohio State, they're going in the transfer portal. They're going to high school recruiting, and they're buying up all of the best players. They're trying to build a team of all of the best cards possible to increase their chances of being able to win, which makes it a lot harder for schools that are in conferences like the ACC or the Big 12 to compete on the same level as these Big 10 and SEC schools, because the bankroll continues to increase for them. Every single year, they keep getting more and more NIL money. The donors keep pledging more and more money into the program. And that gives them more ammunition to say, you know, if we can't get everybody that we want out of high school and we can't get everybody that we want out of the portal, we're just going to get somebody that we see isn't getting that much playing time or is playing for a smaller school, and we're just going to buy him up. We're going to allow the smaller programs that don't have as much NIL money as us to do the hard work for us. We're going to allow them to get the 2- and 3-star guys that go underneath the radar in recruiting. We're going to allow them to develop them for 2-3 years. And then when these guys blossom into all-conference players, we're going to buy them up. And we're instantly going to position ourselves to win a national championship. And we're going to put them at a disadvantage because they don't have the same resources as us where they can just lose a guy and buy somebody else off somebody else's roster. Not everybody has the same NIL budget. Not everybody is playing in the same world money-wise. That's why there is a big gap in terms of what these top programs are spending compared to what these middle-of-the-road programs are spending. I don't even think Arizona State had that much money to spend in NIL money last season when they won the Big 12 title and they went to the college football playoffs. Deion Sanders, he wants more NIL money. It's already tough as it is being able to recruit in some of these places like Colorado and some of these schools like Utah, Oklahoma State in the Big 12. And now you are at a disadvantage money-wise. However, you're going to be able to field a team as good as what Ohio State, Oregon, or Texas put on the field to compete for a national championship. I feel with the way college football is going, we're going to be in a world where we end up seeing all of the blue bloods in the playoffs every single year because they always have the most money. If you don't have the most money, you're not going to be able to have the best team. There may be a few teams here or there that are able to overcome talent deficiencies due to great coaching, but what's going to happen after that season ends? That team that had all of that great talent that overachieved is going to get bought up by bigger schools. The head coach who was responsible for that season is probably going to end up dipping because he wants to go to a school that has more resources, so he doesn't have to continue to have to overcome getting his best player snatched from him. College football is not in a good place right now. And the fact that you have to cheat to win further shows why this sport is in such a terrible place.